Standing room almost over. Right.
Just for you.
So, when I was in chiropractic school many years ago, we were all sitting around, just kind of joking around and whatnot, a bunch of us. And this guy says, what's the greatest invention ever made? What's the mankind's most wonderful invention, just the most amazing invention? Everybody says, the wheel, the discovery of fire, that sort of thing. He says, no, it's not. It's the thermos. It keeps hot things hot and cold things cold. And we're like, yeah, so how does it know? Just sit with that. So, some years ago at a retreat here in Muddy Water, we were doing some walking meditation through the neighborhood at night. Teacher was leading the way, and as we were walking, all of us in single file, we heard, and the teacher says, "What is that?" He points to somebody and says, "That's a dog." He says, then he says, "No, what is that?" He says, "No, Jack Russell Terrier." He says, no. And then he points to a student, and the student says, "Arf, arf, woof, woof, woof." And then we proceeded on. So, did that person give the right answer? Did that person know the answer? Did the answer somehow just arise in him or her to where that answer, arf, arf, woof, woof, was given? And in that setting, that's the answer. Okay, in that Zen Buddhist setting, that's the answer. But let's say we were a family, young family. We have a young child who's very new to the world, hasn't seen much, doesn't even know what dogs are necessarily, just new to everything. And then, woof, 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 you hear that. And the child says, "What is that? What is that?" The Zen answer, "Arf, arf, woof, woof," is not the right answer in that context, is it? With compassion, you answer the child and say, "Look, honey, that's a doggy barking. See over there? Let me show you. See the doggy?" And he's like, eyes wide open in amazement, first time seeing and comprehending what a dog is. And that's as Zen as anything. Sometimes I say there can be too much Zen in Zen. In that, I remember an interchange on a social network. Which one that might have begun with an F and ended with a K? But it's Facebook, sorry. But there was somebody sharing her pain on the internet, in this group, Zen Buddhist group. She was suffering near the end of her life, and the Zen Buddhists in the group, some of them, will just begin, start practicing meditation more diligently. Don't you realize that everything is impermanent? And I thought, this is a human being, it's like, and I replied something to the effect, "I'm so sorry you're suffering, just, have some compassion for this woman. She needs our love and attention, And so, just know that, that there's sometimes too much Zen in Zen. So, many times before I give a Dharma talk, this is my main thought. It's like, you know what? I don't have anything to say. And I was like, I really, all of my brilliant insights are just dried up right now. That well is dry. So, and then I realized, I was ordained a Dharma teacher, not a brilliant insight teacher. Right? So, in mind, you know, it's an easy job in a way, you know, because it's like, I don't have one of the Nikayas in front of me, but if that's your subject matter, that's, you know, the Buddha's words. You just find something relevant and important to teach and go from there. And so I've done that today. And what I want you to kind of consider as I go through, we're going to be reading a sutta. I'm going to be reading a sutta to you. And just kind of keep in mind this theme, you know, or this question, you know, how do I know what I know? You know, is knowledge purely an intellectual thing? You know, is knowledge the result of having the right answer more often than not in college on exams? You know, is knowledge something that you gain from studying really hard certain texts and such? But there's another kind of knowledge, you know, that's sort of this welling up experiential knowledge. You know, do you need to refer to Google to find out if water is wet? You know, you have that experience that water is wet, right? But likewise, or similarly, if you know that the word sinister happens to be in Latin meaning left, you know, that's something you probably learned in college way back when or something like that, or in Latin class in high school. So, two different sorts of knowledge, not one more valuable than the other, but in terms of your spiritual practice, maybe so. Maybe that experiential knowledge, that thing that comes from inside of you, almost seemingly from nowhere, is what is generally thought of as wisdom. So, some background. After the Buddha's enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, he spent some 7 weeks in deepening meditation. You know, you'd think he'd had enough, you know, but he stayed, and deepened his understanding of the subtlety of his realization and you know, deepening his understanding of his knowledge of reality. And in this period of time, he was struggling, you know, it's like, I've come in, as he says, things that have never been heard before. I've encountered this, it came to me. You know, how do I let other people know? How is this possible to teach? It's too subtle, it's simple yet complicated. Nobody's going to really understand. It's too difficult to comprehend and follow. But in this period of time, the gods Brahma and Indra came to him and beseeched him to teach other beings to realize how he had realized and what he had realized, saying, there are those in this world with little dust in their eyes that will be able to follow and understand. There are those with lots of dust and with time and with exposure, and who knows, maybe they'll at one time have little dust in their eyes and be able to understand. So that was a period of time when the gods were able to speak to people, you know, like in the Old Testament and such. With the internet, everything's that's gone now. They can't talk to us anymore. But as part of the reading here, there's a phrase that the Buddha uses. He says, knowing and knowledge, or knowledge arose in me. So consider that. And this arising of knowledge is the culmination of the Buddha's path. It's basically meaning highest wisdom, direct knowledge, experiential knowledge, liberating knowledge. So, and in this sutta, you're going to hear something about the 5 monks. You See, after the Buddha gained his enlightenment, he said, who am I going to teach? He wanted to teach his two teachers that he had been with over the 6 years leading up to his enlightenment, his awakening, but they had passed. He said, I'll find the 5 monks that I was following and leading. He was actually their teacher in effect. And I'll find those 5 monks and teach them. So those 5 monks in the sutta are Kondanya, Badiya, Vapa, Mahanama, and Asaji. Of all those 5 monks, there's one name that probably rings a bell with Buddhists more than any other name. What is that name? Kondanya. Right? You'll see why. So the monks, when they first saw the Buddha approaching, they were suspicious, because he had discovered for himself that there was a middle way. Too much asceticism, too much affliction, denial of self, supreme or maximum self-restraint. That is not the way. That doesn't lead to the end of suffering. And self-indulgence certainly doesn't lead to the way of suffering. But they thought, he had received some rice and milk from a little girl, and they thought, well, gee, look at, he's splurging. He's gone way over to the side of indulgence. We're not going to follow him anymore. So they were suspicious upon the Buddha approaching them. But they also noticed there was something different, something changed in him. They had thought that he had given up asceticism entirely and went to the extreme end of the other end of things, to self-indulgence. But he had not given up all effort in any sense. He's not leading a life of self-indulgence, of idle comfort, of ease. He was declaring and had found that he had attained supreme knowledge and insight. And he said, I can teach it to you so that you may attain it for yourselves. And so that's the basis of our practice, so that you can learn it and experience it and attain it for yourself. So we'll put our hands in Hap Chong. So this is the Dhammacha Kapavatthana Sutta, setting the wheel of Dhamma in motion, the Buddha's first teaching after his awakening. So I have heard that on one occasion the Blessed One was staying at Varanasi in the deer park at Isapatana. There he addressed a group of 5 monks. There are these 2 extremes that are not to be indulged in by one who has gone forth. Which 2? That which is devoted to sensual pleasure with reference to sensual objects, base, vulgar, common, ignoble, unprofitable, and that which is devoted to self-affliction, painful, ignoble, unprofitable. Avoiding both of these extremes, the middle way realized by the Tathagata, producing vision, producing knowledge, leads to calm, to direct knowledge, to self-awakening, to unbinding. And what is the middle way realized by the Tathagata? That producing vision, producing knowledge leads to calm, to direct knowledge, to self-awakening, to unbinding. Precisely this noble eightfold path. Right view, right resolve, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. This is the middle way realized by the Tathagata, that producing vision, producing knowledge, leads to calm, to direct knowledge, to self-awakening, to unbinding. Now this, monks, is the noble truth of stress, the first noble truth. Birth is stressful, aging is stressful, death is stressful, sorrow, lamentation, pain, distress, and despair are stressful. Association with the unbeloved is stressful, separation from the loved is stressful, not getting what is wanted is stressful, and short, the 5 clinging aggregates are stressful. And this, monks, is the noble truth of the origination of stress. The craving that makes for further becoming, accompanied by passion and delight, relishing now here and now there. That is, craving for sensual pleasure, craving for becoming, craving for non-becoming. And this, monks, is the noble truth of the cessation of stress, the remainderless fading and cessation, renunciation, relinquishment, release, and letting go of that very craving. And this, monks, is the noble truth of the way of practice leading to the cessation of stress. Precisely this noble eightfold path, right view, right resolve, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. We can take a mini break here so that we realize those are the 4 noble truths. And in some understanding of this turning of the wheel of the Dhamma, that's where a lot of people stop. I know the noble truths. There's that joke that was on the web recently, so you're a Buddhist, huh? Name me the 4 noble truths. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. As she said, I set the bar a little low. But so, as they say on TV, there's more. Wait, there's more. So, and this to me is where the Buddhist teaching is most profound. It's not just a listing of these noble truths. So again, ends in Hapchang. Vision arose, insight arose, discernment arose, knowledge arose, illumination arose within me with regard to things never heard before. This is the noble truth of stress. Vision arose, insight arose, discernment arose, knowledge arose, illumination arose within me with regard to things never heard before. This noble truth of stress is to be comprehended. Vision arose, insight arose, discernment arose, knowledge arose, illumination arose within me with regard to things never heard before. This noble truth of stress has been comprehended. And vision arose, insight arose, discernment arose, knowledge arose, illumination arose within me with regard to things never heard before. This is the noble truth of the origination of stress. This noble truth of the origination of stress is to be abandoned. This noble truth of the origination of stress has been abandoned. Vision arose, insight arose, discernment arose, knowledge arose, illumination arose within me with regard to things never heard before. This is the noble truth of the cessation of stress. This noble truth of the cessation of stress is to be directly experienced. This noble truth of the cessation of stress has been directly experienced. Vision arose, insight arose, discernment arose, knowledge arose. Illumination arose within me with regard to things never heard before. This is the noble truth of the way of practice leading to the cessation of stress. This noble truth of the way of practice leading to the cessation of stress is to be developed. This noble truth of the way of practice leading to the cessation of stress has been developed. And monks, as long as this, my 3-round, 12 permutation knowledge and vision concerning these 4 noble truths as they have come to be, was not pure, I did not claim to have directly awakened to the right self-awakening, unexcelled in the cosmos with its deities, Maras and Brahmas, with its contemplatives and Brahmins, its royalty and common folk. But as soon as this, my 3-round, 12 permutation knowledge and vision concerning these 4 noble truths as they have come to be, was truly pure, then I did claim to have directly awakened to the right self-awakening, unexcelled in the cosmos with its deities, Maras and Brahmas, with its contemplatives and Brahmins, its royalty and common folk. Knowledge and vision arose in me. Unprovoked is my release. This is the last birth. There is now no further becoming. That is what the Blessed One said. Gratified, the group of 5 monks delighted at his words. And while this explanation was being given, there arose in Venerable Kondanya the dustless, stainless Dhamma-eye. Whatever is subject to origination is all subject to cessation. And now we get into some poetic license. And when the Blessed One had set the wheel of Dhamma in motion, the earth devas cried out, "At Varanasi, in the deer park at Isapatana, the Blessed One has set in motion the unexcelled wheel of Dhamma that cannot be stopped by Brahman or contemplative, Deva, Mara, or God, or anyone in the cosmos." On hearing the earth devas cry, the devas of the 4 kings, heaven took up the cry. The devas of the 33, the Yama devas, the Tusita devas, the Nimaranarati devas, the Parinamita Vasati devas, the devas of the Brahma's retinue took up the cry. At Varanasi, in the deer park at Ispatana, the Blessed One has set in motion the unexhaled wheel of Dhamma that cannot be stopped by Brahman or contemplative, Deva, Mara, or God, or anyone at all in the cosmos. So in that moment, that instant, the cry shot right up to the Brahma worlds, and this 10,000-fold cosmos shivered and quivered and quaked, while a great measureless radiance appeared in the cosmos, surpassing the effulgence of the devas. Then the Blessed One exclaimed, "So you really know, Kondanya? So you really know?" And that is how Venerable Kondanya acquired the name Anya Kondanya. Kondanya who knows. This is So what does this mean to us? What is our assignment? Part of the reason I read that sutta is I venture to think that a lot of us have heard about this but have not heard it. So that's why I wanted to do that. So what I think the assignment is this. It is to know what Anya Kondanya came to know. That's what this is all about. I find it interesting that setting the wheel of Dhamma in motion is not mentioned until Anya Kondanya's awakening. He was the first monk to gain enlightenment. The gods and devas only rejoice after the wheel of Dhamma is set in motion. So the Buddha took on this task to teach the Dhamma for others to awaken just as he had. What an amazing practice, path, religion, whatever you want to call it. There's no request to believe in a deity. There's no promise of salvation in return for believing in something, right? Just a path leading to awakening. It's like when they say, what do you believe in as a Buddhist? The Noble Eightfold Path. So Kondanya's enlightenment verifies that the Buddha's teaching was successful. It's something that could be repeated, and it's something that is accessible to others. In that one first teaching, it proved its fruit. So, may all of us, at some time in this life,